You know what's great about video games? They can be anything, or just the same thing over and over, I guess. But for many of us, video games are an opportunity to do things we can't do in real life, and the possibilities are endless. Except for a new Banjo-Kazooie, apparently. I'm not bitter, I'm super patient. But with video games having the opportunity to do whatever they want, it would only seem natural to me to praise the ones that take advantage of this the best, especially since creativity doesn't guarantee success. In fact, the argument could be made that it actually lessens a game's chance for success. With innovation and business practices constantly being at odds with each other, it's often safer to just make a game that is similar to something gamers already understand than it is to try to convince them that something they don't understand is worth trying to understand, because when they do, it's gonna be awesome. And that's where us retro gamers can give ourselves a nice slow clap, because what we do is scour the depths of gaming's history to give anything and everything a chance. And we've looked into it all. Seriously, I can look up a video on quintessential dog turd for the PlayStation, Hidden and Dangerous, to find out it should remain hidden and dangerous. On the flip side, due to the retro gaming community, certain games have become more popular decades after release than they were at launch. We don't care how poorly they were marketed back in the day, or if perhaps they just weren't very easy to market to begin with. Heck, we even enjoy stuff we may not think is entirely awesome, but can still be enjoyed somewhat ironically. Like that one friend in high school. Actually, I probably was that friend. But while many games could be given credit for having interesting ideas, it's another thing to be able to execute on an interesting idea that results in an amazing game. Rascal is a pretty interesting game. I don't want to play it. Now, naturally, what's unique, what's clever, what's good, and what marries it all together the best is going to be extremely subjective. So, don't expect the 4 games that I choose for this video to match your personal list. Can't even read the minds of thousands of people he's never met. This channel sucks. But really, this is just a way for us to celebrate games we deem to be unique and clever. So be ready to party in the comments by letting us know which games you'd choose. That said, my first game would be Radiant Silvergun, being made by the developer Treasure, famous for being a company started by former Konami employees who wanted more creative freedom in the games they could make. It only makes sense that they'd have a game on this list, given their reputation for making awesome, unique games. Radiant Silvergun is one of the most ambitious takes on the shoot-'em-up genre, but was never released outside of Japan back in the day, seeing as the home console version was released for the almighty Sega Saturn, at a time when it was basically dead in the US without even getting a funeral. Sega had to get ready for the next console funeral. The game, often considered to be a spiritual sequel to Radiant Silvergun, Ikaruga, is a lot more well-known here in the States, even in spite of an unfortunate quote on the cover. But I've always liked Radiant Silvergun a lot better anyways. I thought of a better quote for the cover too. I find it to be less restrictive and more fun to play, in large part due to the 7, that's right, 7 different weapons you can use, which, by the way, works perfectly on a Saturn controller with the 6 face buttons and the R shoulder button to use your sword. Yep, you have a sword that can absorb pink bullets and turn into a giant sword, as if the game wasn't unique enough already. Speaking of which, this game is actually ostracized by certain parts of the hardcore shoot-'em-up community for being too different from other shoot-'em-ups. But the game is clearly trying to be different, with the game's director saying he felt like arcade developers weren't doing enough to innovate within the genre. genre. I can only imagine what he thought of the designers behind claw machines. Each stage throws a variety of different obstacles at you, not only in terms of different enemy types and how they're arranged, but also in terms of the literal obstacles you need to navigate in order to not crash. There was clearly a lot of intention by the creators with the stage and enemy layout, especially given the different colors of the enemies and how focusing on a single color can net you some massive combo points, which will help power up your weapons faster, as using each weapon helps to power them up, making which weapons you choose to prioritize affect your approach to each section. I find this to be brilliant because while the game is difficult, you still feel like you have a lot of freedom to approach it in different ways, and the possibilities are endless, making experimentation and repeated play very addictive, not to mention immensely gratifying when you have success. Sure, your dog poops at inconvenient times in public, but who cares when you know how to combo red enemies and Radiant Silvergun, am I right? Tying it all together, we have a beautiful soundtrack that goes for more of an orchestral approach, a plot focused on the end and rebirth of humanity, cover art that looks like this, and the game's name has the courage to be as grandiose as Radiant Silvergun. Clearly, this game was going for something special, something unlike any other game, and I think they absolutely nailed it. For my next game, we've got Mole Mania for the original Game Boy, yet another one of Shigeru Miyamoto's bangers, but this one people often don't give him credit for because they don't even know the game exists. During a time when cover art would often sell kids on wanting certain games, being told you'll dig Mole Mania just didn't quite work the way Nintendo hoped. Looks like some sort of 90s instructional reading software for kids to me. And maybe they should have gone with a different tagline. I've always felt like the Game Boy was just made for clever puzzle games. Movement isn't too fast, the small screen is less of an issue, and you're just left with very smart gameplay design to work your way through. The main mechanic in the game is your ability to dig holes and move around both under and above ground to navigate the areas. You'll also encounter various obstacles that you can interact with and move throughout the game, some of which you can use to attack the different enemies and even bosses you'll encounter. However, the most notable object in the game is this heavy ball you'll need to navigate to the end of screens that can fall into the holes you dig. So, you'll need to carefully consider where you dig your holes. But, like I said before, the real star of the game is in the stage design, and how smart and satisfied you'll feel while playing it with countless aha moments. Quick little montage for you of my experience playing the game. The game continues to innovate in its puzzle solving throughout, making the overall package really solid and unique. A charming setting and idea, mechanics that are easy to understand, fun to use, and expanded upon in endless clever ways. A masterpiece. For my next game, believe it or not, we're not done with garden-themed games by Shigeru Miyamoto, and that would be Pikmin. The brilliance of this man, I tell ya, the only idea I've ever had related to gardening is I don't want to do this. And I don't. I play video games like Pikmin instead. Now, it's been rumored that Miyamoto came up with the idea for the game while watching ants in his garden. A later interview revealed he actually didn't and just used ants as a way to explain the Pikmin's behavior. All I know is that the game gives me garden-themed vibes and the Pikmin make me think of ants. But this time, they don't make you want to pull your hair out. Anybody who's ever had an ant problem before knows what I'm talking about. It's absolutely infuriating, and burning the whole house down can eventually feel like a reasonable option. But to have the ants now on your side, not to mention take a much cuter form in the form of Pikmin, turning the tables in the best way possible. Being able to command a large group of little creatures and have them do your bidding is so satisfying. They can carry stuff around, break down walls, and of course, attack enemies, then carry their corpses back to your base to be turned into more Pikmin. I'm glad ants can't do that. Wait, they can't, right? With the main objective being to find all your spaceship's parts, the biggest strength of the original Pikmin game is trying to find them all as efficiently as possible by coming up with a game plan for each day. And this is where the brilliance of the game comes into play, managing all the different things in a set day to maximize the results, or as the fourth game calls it, Dandori, the art of organizing tasks strategically and working effectively to execute a plan, which ironically I feel works best in the original game since it has a limited number of days. Because with unlimited days, you can just loaf around and get stuff done as slowly as you want. No game plan required. Kinda like my approach to household chores. I find pretending I cleaned is easier than actually doing it. Plus, in the first game, you can restart a day as many times as you want, allowing you to practice your game plan for a given day until you're satisfied with the results. This is perfect if you ask me. Alright, next game is Nights into Dreams. It had to be on here. There's nothing like it, and even Shigeru Miyamoto is on record as saying he thinks it's a great idea. Imagine if Shigeru Miyamoto thought something you did was great. I just rely on being proud of myself. Nights into Dreams is a game so different from other games that most people don't even understand how to play it the first time they try it. Not quite getting it right. I've noticed a lot of them play it like this. The game plays like an arcade game in a lot of ways, with the idea being to score as high as possible, although you don't have to if you just want to see later parts of the game. You move on a somewhat fixed path with a handful of opportunities to make decisions. The main thing you gotta keep in mind when playing this game is, first thing you gotta do is collect 20 of the blue orbs and deliver them to what's called a capture, which kind of looks like an empty snow globe. This will activate a bonus scoring mode, and from there, you just want to try to collect as many points as possible and avoid the finish by just flying over it until you've scored as many points as possible before the time runs out. Then, right before the timer runs out, you can finish. As far as collecting points goes, just about everything you do will score you points. So, kind of like the opposite of real life? Got it. There are various objects to collect in this stage, rings to fly through, and ways to control your speed as well, with the idea being to fly through the stage as fast as possible while collecting everything in sight in order to maximize your score. The result is an experience unlike any other, and it's extremely addicting to see how well you can do in a given stage. Of course, with a game this abstract, it has a story to match, with the game taking place in a dream world. Naturally, I have to mention the controller too, known as the 3D control pad that many associate with the game, since the two were synonymous with each other and you could buy them bundled together. I have to say, the analog stick on this is the weirdest feeling analog stick that I've ever felt. It definitely adds to the unique feel of the game and makes for a memorable experience. And there you have it for the 4 games that I chose. Funny enough, talking about each one of these games got me in the mood to play all of them. So, guess I was able to convince myself they're great games, but regardless of whether I convinced you, I'd be curious which games you'd pick as unique games that are also really great, in addition to what you thought of the games I picked and my reasons for doing so. So with that, leave your thoughts down below along with anything else you'd like to say, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the Retro, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's the Retro, oh yes, and he hopes that you like